You're watching PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hi there, I'm Henry Rosoff filling in for Dan on this edition of PIX on Politics Daily. A lot happening across the tri-state area political scene. We just had the inauguration of a new governor over in New Jersey, and now the focus is shifting to the elections coming, the all-important midterms here in 2026. Of course, that begins in many areas, many congressional districts especially, with a primary. And there is a very intense Democratic primary currently happening just north of the city in Westchester and Rockland counties for New York 17. That's the congressional seat held by Republican Mike Lawler, who styles himself as a bipartisan deal maker over in Washington. But Democrats have had a number of issues with him for a number of years and have been trying to unseat him. So we're going to work our way through some of the Democratic candidates, beginning with Beth Davidson from the Rockland County Legislature. Beth, thanks for coming on PIX on Politics.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with a straightforward question. Why do you want to be in Congress?
I want to be in Congress because I know how to roll up my sleeves and deliver results that make a real difference in people's lives. You know, long before affordability was a buzzword that people are using, as a member of the Nyack School Board, I worked to pass property tax exemptions for seniors and volunteer first responders. I worked every year to pass responsible school budgets to help feed kids in my community during COVID. I know what it's like to be raising kids here in our public schools, to be representing people who are truly hurt by Donald Trump and Mike Lawler's agenda, whether it's healthcare workers who are afraid of losing their jobs, immigrants in our communities who are afraid of being ripped from their families and disappeared. I live in Rockland County, where 1 out of 6 children don't know where their next meal is coming from. And of course, I sent a daughter off to college this year with fewer rights than I had at her age. And on every one of those issues, I have a record of accomplishments that can go up against Mike Lawler's. I'll put my record on public education, on healthcare, on gun safety. My first 8 months in office, I passed a common sense gun safety law here in Rockland County, where we have a Democratic supermajority that I led the ticket to win, but also a Republican county executive. So I've got bipartisan street cred here in Rockland, too, in terms of reaching across the aisle to deliver for the people I serve.
What do you view as Congressman Lawler's biggest failings? Because, you know, you talk to him, I'll just represent a couple of his basic talking points and let you discuss. Sure. But, you know, he got the SALT cap raised. He's pushed back against President Trump where need be. He supported the president and hasn't made sort of blanket statements, you know, that the president is either good or bad. So he styles himself as someone who's middle of the road and delivering results. Why do you disagree with that premise?
So I wouldn't say that someone who backs up Donald Trump on the tariff policies that are crushing our small businesses is middle of the road. I wouldn't say that someone who backs up Donald Trump's moves to acquire Greenland. He was a primary co-sponsor of the Make Greenland Great Again bill in Congress and was defending Donald Trump's move to acquire Greenland in the last couple of days on cable news. I wouldn't call that middle of the road. I wouldn't call repeatedly voting against a woman's right to choose, which he did going all the way back through the New York State Assembly, being middle of the road. He doesn't represent New York 17's values, and he should not represent us in Washington.
What are you saying to voters right now about this moment we are seeing? Whereas it seems like there's just a fire hose of news that people are trying to understand. It's frankly one of the challenges that I have here in the news business to get people to pay attention to what matters. And without expressing my opinion on anything, people are saying, what's going on with Greenland? Wait a minute, that we just took out the leader of Venezuela. Hold on a second. My neighbors are getting picked up by masked ICE agents. Are they supposed to be here to begin with? It just seems like there's a lot that Americans are grappling with right now. And you want to be a leader of, you know, some 800,000 Americans. So what are you just saying to people right now about the sort of chaotic state of things?
Absolutely. Well, I'll say for myself in this primary that I am already a leader representing Rockland County on so many of these issues, standing up to the Trump administration to protect them from things like, you know, SNAP benefits being cut. I led a resolution to get $2 million in county funding to help feed people during the government shutdown while Mike Lawler was off campaigning with Jack Ciattarelli and fundraising with Ted Cruz. You know, people are definitely alarmed by the day-to-day global events of this administration. And Mike Lawler has, as I said, constantly capitulated to the president on these things. But also at the end of the day, they're worried about how they're going to put food on the table the next day, how they're going to pay their kids college tuitions, how they're going to, especially when, Donald Trump, his Department of Education declassified certain professions like nursing and teaching as professional certifications when we're trying to get more kids to be able to go to college. You talked about the SALT cap that Mike Lawler raised the cap for, but the cap should have expired at the end of last year. New York has known Donald Trump's retribution campaign for a long time, as he has sought over and over to punish blue states like New York for not voting for him. And so, Mike Lawler actually voted to keep the cap in place. And that's something that impacts countless people here in New York 17. And so I think people are focused both on the global stage, but also on how this big, awful agenda that Donald Trump passed and Mike Lawler voted through is going to impact their daily lives. And again, as a Rockland County legislator, I have a front row seat into the ways in which our communities are hurting and fighting back for them every day.
We know that ICE has been a particular focus sort of off and on during this Trump administration, but is really under sharp focus right now following the killing of Renee Good over in Minneapolis. What is your take on that shooting? Is there a concern it could happen in New York 17? And to throw a triple barrel question at you, should New York be a sanctuary state?
So to start with the killing of Renee Good, and look, I'm a mom that's been to many, many a protest. So the day that happened, my husband said, that could have been you. And by the way, I usually had my kids with me when I was protesting. So I shudder to think of how even worse that situation could have been. And as we've seen it unfolding around the country. And what I say over and over again, especially as a county elected official, is that I trust local law enforcement to take care of our communities. I trust our local sheriff's department, and I've spoken with him, and he already doesn't cooperate with ICE and wouldn't cooperate with ICE in terms of carrying out federal immigration activities. And so we need to make sure that local law enforcement have the resources they need to now take care of us. And again, if we want to talk about how moderate Mike Lawler is, I encourage anyone to go look at his social media response to the killing of Renee Good, implying that she helped to instigate the situation and that if people don't want to get killed by ICE, that they shouldn't try to, interfere with federal immigration activities, implying, again, blaming the victim, as we saw Donald Trump and Secretary Noem do right away. And I think that what we're doing here in Rockland County so far is working in terms of people trusting local law enforcement to take care of them and looking out for their neighbors and each other. I'll say that Donald Trump promised to, take violent criminals out of our country, and we're seeing far worse happen. We're seeing our neighbors being disappeared off the streets. We're seeing families being ripped apart. We've seen high school students here in Rockland County spirited off to an ICE detention center, released after a month because they were here legally. We're seeing just this blanket cruelty that is impacting our neighbors, impacting our businesses, and impacting the ways that communities, now all communities, can feel safe, even if you're someone exercising your First Amendment rights to stick up for the people that you call neighbors and friends.
But let me ask this in the context of something you would have control over if elected to Congress, and then presumably a Democratic president gets in a couple of years, because this wouldn't happen under President Trump. Should ICE be abolished, specifically meaning, would you be in favor of zeroing out all funding for immigrations and customs enforcement should you have enough of a majority and a president who would sign that bill?
I would say that we shouldn't be in this position at all. I would have supported the bipartisan immigration law that came up before Congress when President Biden was still president. It was passed by the Senate by a bipartisan coalition, the toughest border security bill in a generation, supported by the Border Patrol. And why did it not pass? Because Mike Johnson wanted to do Donald Trump a solid and not give Joe Biden an issue to run on in the reelection. And Mike Lawler ably supported that as well. So if I had my druthers, we wouldn't even be in this position. I would like to see more money invested in our local communities than the extremely bloated budget of ICE, and make sure that we are helping people who are here trying to get a legal path to citizenship be able to exercise and get down that path, while also taking care of the people who are here in terms of the nonprofit services, healthcare, and things that they need. We are seeing everything that we're seeing happening with ICE is money that could be going to healthcare, that could be going to Medicaid, that could be going to SNAP benefits, that could be helping people in our community. And I think Mike Lawler and the Republicans in Congress have their priorities all wrong. The polls show that the American people do too, and that's why we're going to take back the House in November.
I want to end with one quick question about the mayor of New York City. And obviously, you're not seeking to represent New York City, but you need look no further than the recent race just outside the city to be Nassau County executive. And you just know that Mr. Lawler and Republicans will come after you or one of your Democratic colleagues by saying you're supporting Mr. Mamdani's radical agenda. You can hear the ads echoing now. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So what do you think of the mayor of New York City, and would you accept his endorsement?
So what I'll say about the mayor's own successful campaign is that he was focused on a lot of the same issues I've been focused on since day one of this election, which is a relentless affordability agenda. Again, I'm a working mom raising kids in the Hudson Valley, and I know that everything is too expensive, whether it's our groceries, childcare, the price of gas, the price of eggs. Everything that we talked about has been an issue here, and healthcare just compounding all of those costs as people in my community have seen their premiums triple. And so running on an affordability agenda speaks to people in the Hudson Valley, just as it did in New York City. I'll also say that, you know, if and when Mike Lawler tries to tie me to anyone's agenda, I have my own record to stand on. And it's a record that really reflects the community I serve, which is, you know, where we started at the beginning of this interview. I've cut taxes. I've passed common sense gun safety reform. I've preserved hundreds of acres of open space from overdevelopment. And at every opportunity, we didn't touch on AI, but we passed a great AI bill in the legislature to protect people from deep fakes. We're actually ahead of where Congress is on a lot of the issues that people are concerned about right now. And so I'm focused on my own race and on winning the votes and I have 250 endorsements from around New York 17. Those are the endorsements I care about. And the coalition I'm going to continue to build around the issues we care about here in the Hudson Valley.
Beth Davidson, Democratic candidate for New York 17, hoping to challenge Congressman Mike Lawler this coming fall. Beth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was great to be with you.
And that'll do it for this edition of PIX on Politics Daily. I'm Henry Rosoff in for Dan Mannarino, and I hope you at home have a great day. See you later.